Welcome back to Tell Me More with me, CJ Quarterbaum. Tell Me More exists to help bridge the gap in our intergenerational workplace dynamics, build better leaders, and ultimately prepare for the future. Today, I have the joy of being joined by the author of the book, The Youngest One in the Room, Dayna Adelman. Dayna, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, CJ.
Dayna, I want you to tell the people about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? And what do you do now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, my name's Dayna Adelman. I am a
Oh, I'm
New.
sorry. I said
It's
Adelman.
okay. Yeah, it's okay. It's all good.
You know what? I'm
I
thinking of Rick Adelman, the basketball coach.
Yep, all good, all good. It happens all the time, and I have plenty of stories about name mispronunciations throughout my career, and some of which are in my book, which we'll talk a little bit about today. But I am a New York-based communications professional and author. I recently published a book called The Youngest One in the Room, which is a memoir about the first 10 years of my career and navigating the corporate ladder and growing a career and all the trials and tribulations along the way. But I am currently working at a communications firm called LSG and happy to be back on US soil after an international career that took me across Europe and Asia over the last 15 years.
So the youngest one in the room. Tell me about this first 10 years of your career. What were you doing? What happened?
Great. How much time do you have? So what happened, as most people do, they kind of wander down this path, whether that includes some higher form of education or, you go right into a career, trying to figure out, what do I want to do when I grow up? Let me start off by saying I'm still trying to figure out what do I want to do when I grow up. And I think that's one of the learnings that came out through the book, that a career is a journey and you might have goals along the way, but they are mile markers. They're not end destinations. And my career started at a New York based communications firm, working across multiple different clients in different industries. I really got to sink my teeth into some juicy work, everything from splashy brand communications campaigns, so marketing and public relations, to crisis communications and working on, big issues with big clients during an economic downturn in the country at the time. And from there, I decided that, I want to do a few things with my career in my life. I want to work for a big corporation. I want to see what it's like, to do communications on that side. And I also want to work overseas. And so the journey within the first 10 years was trying to figure out how do I get that? And how do I grow the career? What are some of the learnings from along the way? And so the book actually wasn't meant to be a book. It was essentially a glorified journal that I started during the pandemic to figure out what was driving my energy from a professional sense and what was draining my energy. And little by little, I kept remembering all these stories and these moments from the first 10 years in my career. And I wrote them down. And little by little, I thought, you know what, I might have something here. There might be an interest, or people might be interested in me sharing my story as just a regular person trying to navigate and figure out, how to get from point A to point B, and then how to move on from B to C, and so on and so forth. So it became this incredible cathartic experience to write down, to learn, and then it's been a gift to share because it's opened up the door with so many wonderful people, whether they be early in career or at the end of their career, just exchanging stories and continuing conversation.
It's good. Career that took you around the world. You tried some different things. What did you want to be when you were a kid?
Easy question. I wanted to be an actress. So I'm not doing that today. Although I say in the book, I do think I'm acting every single day, right? You get into a boardroom and you are putting on a show, for better or worse. And actually, I address that in the book too. Like, how do you balance becoming your authentic self, and how do you balance vulnerability in the workplace, so it's not all a show, because at some point you can't be your true self if you're not bringing your true self to that table. So those are lessons I did learn, as I was learning more about myself as a young adult, and yeah, maybe leaving the theater dreams behind, but swapping them for a different type of storytelling as a communications professional.
So good. This idea of showing up as your full self and as you're figuring yourself out,
Hmm.
because that your brain isn't fully formed until your late 20s, but we start working around 22, 23, and there's certain situations that will bring different things out of you that you don't know are there, but then you try to show up kind of as you're figuring these things out at work,
Hmm.
and it's not always the most appropriate place.
Hmm.
But then there's a question of psychological safety. Psychological safety in the workplace is this idea that I can show up as my full self, but there's rules of engagement. How'd you navigate those waters as you were figuring that out?
Yeah, I would say it wasn't always easy, and that's not because I wasn't in safe environments. I do feel very blessed that I have been in wonderfully supportive environments throughout the course of my career, some more than others for sure, right? It's not always rainbows and butterflies, but I do think that um, figuring out who you can lean on, so finding the right mentors, and you don't necessarily get to pick your manager, but you can learn a lot from managers, whether they be good managers or bad managers. And so I remember somewhere along the way really starting to listen and learn instead of just going through the motions. It probably was about like 5 or 6 years into my career, and then trying to surround myself by people who had a lot of ambition or had grown in a way in which I really admired, and I tried to be a sponge in their presence. So I guess the answer to the question is I tried to, if the environment wasn't there naturally, I tried to create it and find it for myself, and then tried to emulate the good things I picked up along the way, and then course correct what I deemed, the not so great things that, seeing that other people engaged in terms of behaviors, ways of working, so on and so forth. So it's not something, again, we're so young when we start a career. It's not something that came overnight. And it's not something that I just woke up one day and was like, oh, great, I have it all figured out now. Something that has come with years of practice and reflection as well. And I think reflection is something I can't stress enough. Whether you are journaling or just, whatever your form of reflection is, I think we don't do it enough. And, no matter what profession we're in, and the positive impacts it can have are just incredible if you give yourself the opportunity to pause and reflect.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So my post this week for my Substack and my YouTube video was about this very thing of mentorship.
Mhm.
And, I'm a firm believer that that first job out of college will determine a lot for you in terms of shaping and forming and framing you. And I look at Gen Z right now. A lot of my work is centered around Gen Z and kind of where they are and some of their struggles. And they're such an isolated generation to begin with, but then they're also cut off from millennials and Xers and boomers. And I'm yelling at millennials, Xers, and boomers right now, and I'm saying, give them what we had, just
Yes.
mentors.
Yep.
Like, none of us figure this life out alone. And
No.
Gen Z is crying for help.
Yeah.
Just that ability to reach down and say, hey, I navigated this road 10 years ago. Let me help you walk through it. Can you share maybe some like big things you picked up from mentors along the way?
Yep. Absolutely. But before I do that, I just want to kind of add on to what you're saying. My current job now, for the first time, I am working with Gen Z. And I'm enjoying it so much because I think it's giving me an opportunity to give back and mentor. But also, I would say to millennials, boomers, Gen Xers, be open to reverse mentorship because we can learn a lot from them as well. So it does go both ways. And I actually think that that's one of the things I learned along the journey of being a mentee, that as important as it is to kind of listen and learn, you also want to find a mentor who gives you space to share your views and your thoughts and can help you make sense of it as well.
Yeah.
You don't want someone who's just going to be all, this is the way you have to do it. So be careful of that when you're looking for a mentor. Find someone who you really respect, who you know you can learn from, being in their presence, who you can feel comfortable asking questions to, but also someone who gives you space to be part of the conversation. So
Yes.
that's definitely something I learned along the way. Has it work in a reciprocal nature? Um,
That's really good. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And, I think so that was a big piece of it. I think the other thing was finding different types of mentors. So, there there's a lot to be said about, someone who is in the same career path as you, but I also think finding someone who's doing something a little bit different could be wildly interesting as well because they bring different perspective. They may not be able to, they're probably not going to be the person who can guide you on, immediate next steps in career, but they can bring different perspectives. They can open your mind to possibilities that you didn't even know existed. So I would say don't limit yourself too when you're looking towards mentorship. It doesn't have to be someone in your direct line of business.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. I think when we get that diversity of perspective,
Hmm.
it opens us up to possibilities we didn't even know were there.
Absolutely. And I think the same if you take it a step further, looking at different genders, people from different backgrounds, just trying to find all different unique perspectives. And the more you open yourself up to being a sponge, I think the better off you'll be.
The best advice I heard was a mother give her son. She was an English teacher, and she would tell her son all the time, "Read books that don't pertain to you." And when
Hmm.
he was a kid, he was like, "Why? Like, I don't care about Judy Blume."
Yeah.
And now, as an adult, he's like, "Wow, it just it gave me greater vision for
Yeah,
myself and for my life and for the world around me." That's a
absolutely.
great piece of advice.
It's a wonderful piece of advice because you also don't know when you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're trying to find commonalities with someone. And on the surface, it might not exist, but who knows? Maybe you uncover you're both Judy Blume fans, or you've read Judy Blume at some point, right? And like all of a sudden you found a piece of connection to hopefully, expand on and take the relationship in a deeper direction. So you never know when all this knowledge will show itself in a positive light. So I think that's great advice.
Or you're like me and you're just full of useless facts about things and would be really good on Jeopardy. You just haven't made it yet.
Exactly. Just waiting for the opportunity to share the random fun fact about,
Yeah, I know too many
yesterday.
random things about random things.
I don't think that's a
Yeah,
bad thing. I think that's actually a wonderful thing. And
that's what
maybe,
I'm
I don't know,
hoping.
future on Jeopardy for you or or one of those trivia game shows.
It would make my grandmother so proud.
Aw.
Tell me, what are you learning from Gen Z?
Well, learning how to use technology to our advantage, right? So not to just throw it aside, and embrace it. And I think the other thing I'm learning from Gen Z is how to relax. I think we come from a generation, millennials, especially those who, came of age in the financial crisis back in '08, '09. There's a lot of pressure, different types of pressures. We were straddling this world where like we were on the cusp of a lot of change and transformation all around us. Um, and I think a lot of us came out of that with high anxiety. And, it's not that anxiety doesn't exist in Gen Z. I think each generation has their own challenges to deal with. But I do find that a lot of Gen Zs, they look at life a little bit lighter. And I personally don't know why that is, but I think there's a lot to be said about that and taking a page out of their book. Um, whether it be kind of like the own language that they've created that we're all now trying to adopt and figure out, okay, what does that mean?
I'm not.
To
I quit. I'm the
Yeah,
old man in the room. I'm not learning your new words. Just use the
no,
regular ones.
yeah. Well, the crazy thing we were chatting previously about, you have young kids, I have young nieces, and now they have new words, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to carry around like a cheat sheet for the all the generations now. But
You know, the new AirPods, the AirPods 4 come with live language translation.
no
So I'm
way,
like, if
I
they
didn't
can
know
just
that.
do like a Gen Z lingo to my ears sort of situation, I'm down.
I know. I think let's manifest that, like some kind of like either Google Translate
Yes.
generational language, or through the AirPods. That would be amazing. So that's crazy. But yeah, I think just learning how to look at life in a different light and how to enjoy life a little bit more. I think they've got their priorities straight in terms of work life balance. And I think it's a reminder that there is more out there than sitting in an office, from 9 to 5 plus 5 days a week.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the book Five Regrets of the Dying?
Oh, I haven't.
Oh, so it's this really great book. This woman,
Okay.
I want to say she's a social psychologist
Okay.
who spent years studying people at the point of death.
Wow.
And she came up with this book like, hey, here are the top 5 regrets people have on their deathbed. Not a single one of them was about work or about accomplishing more. It was about wishing I had those relationships still, wishing I said the things I wanted to say, wishing I spent more time with my family. My mother spent 30 years as a hospice nurse. And so for 30 years, right, like for 30 years, she watched
Yeah.
people die.
Yeah.
And way too often, she was the only person in the room because they were really wealthy or really accomplished, or they've just alienated everyone in their lives. But ultimately, their lives, the end of their lives, were a marker that the entirety of their lives were spent chasing the wrong things. And in the end, they wanted their people, their family, their friends, and had no one.
Well, you're going to bring me to tears.
It,
But yeah. And
sobering.
it is sobering, and I don't know where we went wrong, and I don't think it's unique to the millennial generation, but I do think the millennial generation struggles, to balance and to put the right things first. And, yeah, you hear stories like this, and I think I'm gonna write that book down because I think we could all, do ourselves a favor by reading something like that, and just remembering that there's more out there that makes us who we are than a career, even though a career can be so incredibly rewarding as well.
Yeah, work is what you do. It's not
Mhm.
who you are.
Who you are. Yeah.
And if work becomes your identity, I think that can be a really scary thing because if all I am, or if the majority of who I am is what I
Yeah.
do, what
Yep.
happens when that's taken away?
Yeah.
So as millennials, right, like we came of age during the financial crisis, the amount of people who committed suicide when their bank accounts got depleted, something has gone wrong.
Yeah.
Something is not right there. And yet we keep saying to ourselves, I just need to chase more. But what
Yeah.
is enough?
Yeah.
Like truly what is enough so that we can live these kind of full, flourishing, happy lives where our joy isn't tethered to the office we show up to every day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's that, and then I have a whole theory on the role of social media, and what it's done to us, particularly as millennials. Um, it's concerning for sure, and if we can kind of take ourselves out of the what does perfect look like, or what do we think it looks like, and how are we trying to portray that, and really get back in touch with what makes me happy and what makes me tick. That's the only way to live your truth and to, get yourself on a path that I think will lead to fulfillment.
Yeah. Listen, I think I'm on social media. I use it. I post all my things because
Have
that's the
to
world
do
we
it.
live in now. But I think it is a net negative on society.
Yeah, I
And
totally agree.
there was a story I read a couple of years ago, and it was about these young teenagers who were experiencing low self-esteem because they would look at their parents posting pictures of them when they were younger, and we only post the best pictures.
Of
And they would
course.
say to themselves at 10, 11, 12, 13, I used to be so cute. I used to be so adorable. And, that awkward preteen phase, it's like, well, now look at me. And they're experiencing these bouts of depression because their parents thought they were doing a good thing. Like when I talk to teenagers now, I say to them, we didn't know any better. We all got handed these smartphones in 2011, 2012, and
Yep.
we're like,
Yep.
oh, great. Twitter, this is fun.
Hey,
Instagram,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
We had no idea what we were getting into and
No.
what we were signing you up for. And so when
No.
I look at my kids and I look at your nieces at that
Yep.
age, if
Yeah.
we make the same mistakes again, we have no one else to blame. We got a whole generation that they were the guinea pigs, and I'm really sorry. But for the next generation, we can't do this again.
No, I fully agree. And, I hope that enough people will take a stand to make sure that we're putting protections in place and whatnot. But I don't know. Again, we could probably have like a whole separate
Yeah.
conversation on this
Yeah.
topic. But it is fascinating. And I don't know. We can only hope that we learn from the lessons and find a positive way forward.
Let's talk some more about your book because that's what
Yeah.
we're here for. We've been all over the place, but which I love. But tell me, what was it like for you to be the youngest one in the
It was daunting. There were moments in my career where I was the youngest by a decade, by 2 decades. And I think in the early days, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, why am I here? Am I just here to take the notes? Am I just here because who knows? And once I started to figure out there was power in being the youngest one in the room, and I don't mean that in an evil way, but it gave me the opportunity to hear things and to then make sense of things and be able to take that and run with it and formulate my POV on certain topics at work. And I realized, oh, wow, I need to make every opportunity of being the youngest one count. And, there were moments where I would listen louder than I would speak in meetings because that's what I felt I needed to do. And then there were other moments where I was able to insert my voice and no one necessarily expected me to jump in. And, I think I gained a lot of credibility by being able to formulate, a POV that maybe from a generational perspective, millennials, we were the Gen Zers of the time. Oh, wow, we wouldn't have thought of that. I would hear all the time, or I'm so glad you said that. And that started to build confidence. But that took time and it took practice to kind of perfect and to figure out, okay, how am I going to approach a meeting where I'm going to be the youngest one in the room? It's like the rule of three was, what did I hear? What did I learn? And what am I going to do with this information? And that's the way I started approaching all of these meetings, whether it was with the most senior member of my team or the CEO of a multinational company. And just have confidence in the fact that you are there for a reason. If you weren't meant to be there, you wouldn't be there because there are plenty of people who are not in the room. And take that opportunity and run with it because it's a gift that's been granted to you.
Did you ascend to any leadership positions as the youngest one?
I did. I did.
What
So
was
my
that like?
most recent role was before my current role was leading a whole function at a subsidiary of the Heineken company in Indonesia. And so I was sitting on a management team. I reported into the CEO, and it was a publicly listed company in Indonesia. So I was on the board of directors as well. And I got that job when I was 34 years old, which is very young to be sitting in an executive level position. And I used to hide that. I used to not share my age, but now it's actually such a source of pride, not because I climbed the ladder so fast, but because it was such a unique situation and an incredible opportunity that I was granted at a young age. And so I sat at this management team level, team with, people who were 20 years older than me. And I was expected to be as much a part of running a business as they were. And so, I think what comes with that, a lot of imposter syndrome in the early days, both with my peers, but also with my team, because I was leading a team where some of the people, they were way older than I was, and I was coming from a different culture. This was in Indonesia. I was coming from the West. I was a female. So there were a lot of different dynamics at play. And I think in those moments, there were some times where I quite honestly held my breath and hoped for the best. And there were other times where I was able to get outside of my head and say, again, you're here for a reason. You've worked really hard for this. You have something to bring to the table, and someone saw something in you to put you in this position. And that was kind of enough of my internal rally cry to do what I needed to do in order to create the team that I wanted to create and to build the program that I wanted to build. And it ended up being one of the most rewarding experiences, even though the journey to get to the reward was to date the most challenging in my career thus far.
What do you think you learned from that time that you're going to carry with you for the rest of your life?
I learned to, I learned many things. I'm like, where do I begin? I learned I learned that you have to trust your gut. I think in that situation, especially coming from a different culture, I really wanted to listen louder than I spoke, especially in the beginning, because there were things I just wasn't going to know because I wasn't from there. And so the cultural nuance was really important. So I quickly figured out, who could I trust to understand cultural nuance. So I learned to quickly figure out, who are your champion, not necessarily your champions, but who are your support network who can help you navigate, who can you trust, number one. And then number two, why I said earlier, trust your gut. There were certain initial inclinations that I had of, how I wanted to run my piece of business, how I wanted to structure my team. And I waited a little bit longer than I probably should have to act on those things. They ended up being the right move and the right step, but I did second guess myself, and I lost a little bit of time ultimately. And I think, having had I had a little bit more confidence to say, "I know this is right, let's go and do it," I could have gotten to the place where I ended a little bit quicker. Um, but you know what? The learning was part of the journey, and I don't
Yeah.
regret it in the end because now I know for next time.
Yeah. Are you a big reader?
I am a big reader. Yes.
So you strike me as a big reader.
I
All right.
love reading.
So as I kind of bring this to a close, I had a kid ask me tonight, 18-year-old girl, and she goes, "Hey CJ, give me 5 books for
Mm,
self-development." And I was like, "Oh, it's funny you ask because I've been working on a list that I'm calling the Gen Z launcher. The
okay,
five books that you need to kind of develop skills that you need for life. I'm not going to ask you for 5, but give me 3 books that you would give your current Gen Z employees and say, hey, these are the skills you're going to need for the next 15 years."
good one. One of my all-time favorites is a book called Who Moved My Cheese? I don't know if you're familiar with that one?
Yes.
So, that is I was given that probably within the first 2 years of my career, and it still sits on my bookshelf. I haven't read it in a while, so I should probably give myself a refresh, but it stuck with me all those years. So, definitely Who Moved My Cheese. Um, I am going to say this book, and then I'm gonna tell you why. There's a book that was recommended that I read called Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office, and
I've heard of it.
yes, and so I read that book, and I actually think it was the impetus for turning my journal entries into my own book that I wanted to publish, um, because I think the title of that book is very misleading. I think it teaches women that you can't be yourself. If you're a nice girl, and I'm taking this very literal, but if
Yeah.
it's essentially saying if you're nice, it's saying you have to play a different game in order to get the corner office. And I don't agree with it. So the reason why I recommend reading it is almost as a like what not to do. And to be able to recognize how am I different and how can I use that to chart my own path. Um, so I'm recommending it with that caveat of like, don't believe everything you read, but read the things that will get you to figure out who am I and who do I want to be in the workplace. So there's that one. And then, am I allowed to recommend my own book?
Absolutely. I would be disappointed if you didn't.
Well, number three, the youngest one in the room. I think, look, I've shared with you, I grew up in the communication space, but what I've heard from several readers who come from different fields, I've heard from a nurse, teachers, all different therapy-based professions, that there's something for everyone in there. So I do think whether you're, no matter what your profession and whether you're early career, mid-career, or even end of career, because it's a lot of human story, there's something for everyone in there. So I have to recommend that.
Absolutely plug our own work on here. So tell me, Dayna, I think this would be my final question. I don't know. I just like talking to you.
I was going to say, we can keep going.
So we're about the same age. Perhaps you are having the same almost midlife crisis that I'm having. 10 years from now, what does life look like?
10 years ago, I would have told you exactly what 10 years would have looked like. I don't have an answer for that right now. And I think because things are changing so fast, I don't want to lock myself in to a vision that I may not want in 10 years' time. So I'm actually not going to answer that question because I think that's becoming dangerous and could be a little bit limiting because things are changing so quick and so rapid. And I actually think part of the reason why I can't answer the question is because where I might be doesn't exist. Like, I don't even know it exists at this moment in time. And I want to leave room for exploration and to figure that out along the way. And so I no longer answer the 5-year, 10-year question, not because I'm trying to skirt the question. I genuinely don't know. And I'm
No, I
so
love
okay
it.
with that.
I love it. I think at this age, that is probably the most perfect answer because we've lived long enough to know that whatever plans you make, life just doesn't work out that way.
Yeah.
I've been at this podcast, YouTube, my Substack for a year now. I
Yeah.
launched it on my birthday last year. The 1 year anniversary is coming up in a couple of
Congratulations.
weeks.
Exciting.
And so this is 2025. So I guess, yeah, I started this in 2024. At the beginning of 2024, or no, at the beginning, yeah, I think somewhere around 2023, 2024,
Yep.
I bought a MacBook
Okay.
and I needed a new one. And I'm at the store and the guy's like, well, what do you do? I was like, I'm a writer.
Yeah.
He goes, all right, like, are you going to be editing videos or anything like that? I'm like, no, I don't do that. I don't write videos, edit videos, any of that stuff. Literally 6 months later, I crashed that computer because all of a sudden I was making videos and editing videos. That wasn't even in my purview. And if there's anything I figured out, it is that we have none of the answers. You mentioned earlier, like, still trying to figure out what we want to be when we grow up. I knew it at 10, but I didn't really solidify it until I was 30. And then the
Mm-hmm.
last 8 years has just been iterating on that vision. And it has taken me places that I didn't expect. So I love that answer. We don't know.
Thank you. We don't know. I feel that it resonates deeply with me. And I think that it's come with such a sense of peace that I didn't have when I was younger. And I wouldn't trade that. I don't want to go back in time because I think I had to have gone through the journey to arrive at that peace. But I can tell you, I am enjoying where I am in life right now, and uh, just excited to see where the road takes us.
I'm excited to see too. I look forward to following along on your journey. And because you are very close to me, we're going to have to grab a coffee sometime soon.
I cannot wait. I'm looking forward to it. And the cooler weather is coming. So,
Oh,
happy
yes.
to grab a warm beverage and catch
Oh,
up
yes.
anytime.
But for everyone else who is not local to us, where can they find you?
So, the best way is on my website, which is DaynaAdelman.com, DaynaAdelman.com. There you can email me. You can link out to all my social media, whether that be Instagram, LinkedIn, and would love to be in touch.
Man, that's great. Dayna, thank you for joining me on the podcast. The
Thanks
book
for having
is
me.
The Youngest One in the Room. Go and pick it up now. And thank you for joining in on another episode of Tell Me More. Go ahead and do me a favor and just drop in the chat, what's your favorite book in terms of self-development? And I'll see you next time as I ask you to tell me more.